Imagine, if you will, a peaceful village on the outskirts of civilization, where life follows a comfortable, predictable rhythm. But one morning, something disrupts this tranquility. In this peaceful haven, nestled in the bosom of nature, the villagers woke up to an unsettling reality. Their livestock, the lifeblood of their community, had begun to disappear. One day a chicken coop was found empty, the next a pigsty, then a cowshed. The disappearances were sudden, unexplained, and left the villagers in a state of bewildered fear. The village, once filled with the familiar sounds of bleating goats, clucking hens and mooing cows, was now eerily quiet. The silence was punctuated only by the whispers of the wind and the hushed voices of the villagers as they tried to piece together the fragments of the mystery. Each morning brought with it a new discovery: empty barns, broken fences, and an unsettling silence. The once bustling farmyards were now ghostly arenas of the unknown. The villagers, with their sun-hardened faces and calloused hands, could only stare at these empty spaces in disbelief and mounting fear. The local police were summoned. They arrived with their notebooks and pens, ready to record the details, to find a pattern, to solve the mystery. But the mystery was as elusive as the morning mist. No tracks, no signs of struggle, no clues. It was as if the livestock had vanished into thin air. The police were as clueless as the villagers. Rumors began to swirl. Whispers of an unknown beast, a monster, prowling in the dead of night began to circulate. The village, once a haven of peace, was now a hotbed of fear and speculation. The villagers bolted their doors at dusk, huddled together in their homes, their faces etched with fear. As the sun set, a chilling fear settled over the village. No one knew what lurked in the darkness, but they knew something was out there. The night was no longer a tranquil blanket, but a thick veil hiding unspeakable horrors. In the heart of the village, the usual nocturnal serenity was shattered. A villager, Sam, was the first to feel the cold shivers of dread. His eyes, wide with fear, caught the sight of a large, shadowy figure prowling near his barn. It was a sight that would haunt him, a memory etched in his mind like a chilling epitaph. The figure was massive, its form looming ominously in the moonlight. It moved with a predatory grace, its silhouette distorted and warped by the flickering shadows. The size of it alone was enough to send a chill down Sam's spine, but it was the deep, guttural growl that truly froze his blood. It was a sound that echoed in the still night, a primal call that seemed to reach into the very core of his being. The growl was more than just a sound, it was a tangible presence, a beastly whisper in the wind that carried a promise of impending doom. It was a chilling symphony of the night, a nocturnal aria that played on the strings of raw fear. As the news of this terrifying encounter spread, the village descended into panic. The once tranquil hamlet was now a cauldron of fear and uncertainty. Whispers of the beast echoed through the cobbled streets, each retelling amplifying the horror of the unknown. The hearty laughter and cheerful banter that once filled the village tavern were replaced by hushed conversations and anxious glances. Mothers hugged their children a little tighter, fathers patrolled the streets with grim determination, and the elderly muttered prayers under their breath. Sleep was a luxury few could afford, as every creak, every howl, every rustle of the wind was a potential harbinger of the beast. The once peaceful village was now a stage for a horror show, the curtains drawn back to reveal the nightmarish reality. The beast had emerged from the shadows, its presence as real and terrifying as the deep scars of fear it left on the villagers' hearts. The beast had shown itself, and the village was gripped by a fear they had never known. With dawn came determination. The villagers decided they would not live in fear. The sun graced the sky with its first light, and the village stirred from its frightful slumber. Something had to be done about the beast that lurked in the shadows, that haunted their dreams and threatened their lives. The village, once a tranquil place, now resembled a fortress preparing for battle. Men and women, young and old, armed themselves with whatever they could find. Pitchforks, axes, and even old hunting rifles were dusted off and loaded. The blacksmith worked tirelessly, his forge aglow, creating weapons from farming tools. The villagers knew they were not warriors, but they were resolved to protect what was theirs. The bravest among them stepped forward to lead the charge. These were not seasoned soldiers, but farmers, blacksmiths, and teachers. They knew the land better than anyone, and were willing to risk everything for their home. Their faces, hardened by the grim determination, reflected the courage that pulsed within their hearts. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, the hunting party ventured into the surrounding woods. The forest, once a source of wood and game, had now become a battleground. Every rustle of leaves, every snapped twig sent hearts racing. The beast was out there, lurking somewhere in the shadows, and they meant to flush it out. They moved with caution, their eyes scanning the underbrush, their ears straining for any sign of the monster. But the forest was vast and dense, its secrets well kept. The villagers found themselves not as hunters, but as intruders in a world that was no longer theirs. They pressed on, deeper into the woods, each step taking them further from the safety of their homes and closer to the unknown. The beast had drawn them into its lair, and they could only hope their courage would be enough. The hunt was on, but the beast was elusive and the woods were full of surprises. As the sun began to set, the hunters found themselves not as the pursuers but the pursued. In the dimming twilight, the chilling confrontation between the villagers and the monster transpired. The hunters, once the predators, were now the prey. The chilling wind carried not just the scent of looming danger, but also an eerie silence that echoed the villagers' dread. The monster emerged, its form a silhouette against the dying light. Its size was colossal, a terrifying spectacle that dwarfed the tallest structures of the village. It moved with an unnatural grace, its steps echoing like thunder, shaking the very foundations of their resolve. Its strength was unparalleled, each swipe of its clawed hand felling trees and scattering the hunters like leaves in a storm. The terror of the monster was not just in its physical might but also in the raw, primal fear it incited. The villagers were awestruck, their hearts pounding in their chests as they faced off against a beast like no other. The monstrous creature was not merely a physical entity, it was a symbol of their deepest fears, their nightmares given form. It was as if the villagers were confronting not just a beast, but their own mortality, their insignificance in the face of such unimaginable power. The hunters, once brave and determined, found themselves outmatched. Their weapons were nothing more than toys against the beast's impenetrable hide. Their strategies, so carefully planned, became meaningless in the face of the monster's raw power and sheer size. The confrontation was a revelation, a harsh reality that they were not the apex predators they had believed themselves to be. They were merely humans, fragile and vulnerable, standing against a monster that was beyond their comprehension. The confrontation ended not with a triumphant victory, but with a humbling defeat. The hunters, their courage shattered, fled. The monster, triumphant, roared into the night, a chilling reminder of their defeat and the terror that now owned the night. In the face of such monstrous power, the hunters fled, their courage shattered. The village was in despair, their hope shattered, but in the midst of their defeat they discovered a dreadful truth. A truth so harrowing it would send chills down the spine of the bravest soul. They had been living in fear of a beast, a monster that crept in the darkness, but they were yet to realize that the real terror had been among them all along. As the ashes settled from the confrontation, they stumbled upon a revelation that twisted their world, turning it inside out. The monster that had been casting a shadow over their lives was not an outsider, not an invader from another world. It was one of their own, a villager, one amongst them, had been transformed into this beastly creature by a cursed artifact unearthed from the deep woods. This artifact, a relic of a time long forgotten, held a curse so potent that it had the power to corrupt the innocent, to transform a man into a monster. The villager, driven by curiosity, had unwittingly triggered this curse, becoming its victim, its puppet, its monster. The realization was like a punch to the gut. The air became heavy, the silence deafening. The villagers were gripped by a new kind of terror, a fear more profound than the one of a physical monster. It was the fear of transformation, the fear of becoming monsters themselves, the fear that their humanity could be stripped away, replaced by an insatiable hunger for chaos and destruction. This dreadful truth sparked a flame of self-awareness that was both terrifying and enlightening. The villagers had been living in fear of an external entity, but the real horror had been lurking within them, within their potential to become monsters. So they lived on, not in fear of the monster in the woods, but of the monsters they might become. The true horror was not the beast outside, but the potential beasts within. They realized that the real battleground was not in the woods but within their hearts and minds. The real fight was against their own potential to become the very beasts they feared.